The M2 money supply is increasing, which means the US Fed is pumping money into the economy. Also, some analysts are saying that it is not the year to sell in May and go away. But is it? Or is it the perfect time to just wait on the sidelines as everything goes slow over the coming summer? And Paul from Definity is joining us to take a look at the bigger picture, and then we'll dive into some of the altcoins together. Welcome to the Crypto Rain channel and our family. Now, if you, like me, came into crypto because you realize the potential for life-changing gains, realize that it happens over a 4 to 8 year period. And if you're here looking for discussion on becoming a solid, unshakable, savage crypto investor, like a Navy SEAL of crypto investing, you're in exactly the right place and with the right family, the Rainmaker family. Now, Paul has been gracious enough to give us a day a week for the last 2 years with his 30 years background in price analysis, which is awesome. He often chooses a very different style of investing from me, but I feel like the benefit is you get to listen to somebody who is top in what he does, coupled with my analysis on how I look at things for crypto, and I've been in crypto for 7 years, so that you can get the benefit of both points of view. Now, if you haven't already, do make it rain on that like button. Strap in for the show. Welcome, Paul from Definity. Paul, thank you so much for joining us.
It's a pleasure as always.
I do want to note, none of this is financial advice. We're definitely not your financial advisors, and I'm not a financial advisor. I'm just a crypto investor myself. Paul is an investor in many different markets. So I will be giving our opinions on different things, and these are our opinions for what we like, for what we would do. Paul, what do you think of the market and generally what's going on with the markets in general? We do have this bigger saying, sell in May and go away. Do you think that applies this year with the election year in the US? Or
Yeah, it's a really
make it different?
It's a very interesting question. I've heard some different opinions on it from different people, and I was talking to one analyst who was saying that he thought April was the new May and you should have sold in April. And I was talking to another analyst who's warning that there's going to be a crash. And also, what seems to be happening is that the market is just consolidating. And from what I can see, if we're taking, for example, the UK as an example, they underperformed in terms of the stock market. When we're talking about a crash, we'd be talking about equity markets because they tend to drive everything. UK stock market is making new highs, new all-time highs as we speak. Looks like the Australian market's going to make new all-time highs. And the chart that I've got up here that we're going to have a look at the moment, the American markets are just in consolidation. So sell in May, but just get ready to buy back is probably what I would say. Perhaps we'll see a bit of a sideways grind or maybe even a bigger retracement from where we are now. So it might be that this is what happens and the market has a bit of a consolidation. Bitcoin equities have been running hot and there's no reason why we shouldn't see a pullback. But it's more the sentiment that worries me as to whether we're at a major top. And as we've said a few times on the show, I just don't think that we've got this massive, crazy public participation in cryptocurrencies. It just doesn't seem like there's that fever to get in, and lots of people just going crazy over silly projects, and which is what you'd normally see. I mean, of course, there's a level of that with meme coins, but we really need to see some proper craziness before I think this is over. So for the moment, it's a consolidation, I would say. We may see the market go lower, so that could fit the sell in May bill. But it's not, it's one where I think we have to be keen to be getting back in, because the market, once it's over, we're going to get ready for another sharp move to the upside. And that's pretty much in everything. So perhaps we should see what markets don't retrace as much as other things, and see that tells us relatively what's called relative strength on pullbacks. If certain markets don't pull back very far, tells you they're going to lead the way. You can see it a bit with gold and silver. Silver came back quite a lot more. Gold didn't come back quite as much. And when they move up again, gold will probably lead the way. Platinum hasn't started moving yet, but it now looks like it's going to move. We might see a bit of a catch up. So these things wax and wane. Sometimes you get leaders, sometimes you get laggers, but it depends on the overall market sentiment as to whether we're in a turning phase, i.e. a major turning of the trend, or whether we're just in this consolidation point before we get the next move up. And if we were in a reversal phase, like a proper reversal phase, I think there'd be a bit more evidence out there. There'd be like major tops in stocks that had gone sideways and sentiment would be really hot, but that doesn't seem to be the case. So the person that was predicting a crash, I mean, that I suppose a crash type move is always possible. You never rule anything out in the markets. Anything is possible. It doesn't look very likely, but we'll have to see. We'll have to see how things pan out. But it's an interesting call, and I never ignore a call because I think it's always good to investigate it just in case. But it doesn't look like. It doesn't at this point look like there would be a crash. It just looks like there might be a bit of a correction.
Yeah. Do you know, going back further on to that statement, sell and man go away, do you know what historically caused that or what was driving that?
I think it's just year-on-year analysis. I think part of it is just because we sort of have at the beginning of the year in January, people sit down and decide what stocks they want to buy. And then by the time we hit January, all the analysis has been done. And you start to see, certainly in the UK, possibly in the US, but I'm guessing it may even be amplified, a lot of sport comes in. You have Wimbledon coming up. You have football match finals and stuff like that. So there's a lot that, and I know it might sound like totally disconnected, but it just seems like the focus goes off a little bit as we enter into the summer. And I mean, the biggest example of that is in August, where literally everything just stops or seems to just stop. And you can get some very sharp moves that come in from some of the you get the main person on the desk who's on holiday, you know, the head of trading, and you get the secondaries who can sometimes panic a little bit. And that's why August can be quite a volatile month. But overall, I think it's just seasonal trends. But I mean, you're quite right to ask the question, because some years it doesn't happen like that. And I think in this year, because it is an election year, it is one that is expected to be goosed up. And as we approach November, the market should be running hot. And actually, on that point, we were talking on Friday, and in my diary, I'd had for this Friday for the non-farms, which wasn't right. It was actually last Friday that non-farms came out. And I was talking about there being a weaker number than expected, which would make the markets go up. And actually, while I was on the show, that had already happened, which I hadn't seen that data come out. For some reason, I had it wrong in the diary, and it didn't seem to come out. I didn't see it on the newswire. So I was actually, to be fair, very busy on that day, but I should have seen it. But the point is that weakening data is now giving the Fed some room to cut rates. So we saw that call on Wednesday last week where they didn't move and they weren't expected to move. The next thing is, do we see weaker data that then suddenly gives them this opening to maybe lower interest rates? And that's the first kind of inkling that maybe interest rates could go down. And the market loved it. The market is still continuing to like it. The dollar's weakened. It's gone back up a little bit. There's some tension in the Middle East that is, there wasn't a resolution in Israel, which is a shame. But, I'm not going to get into politics because I don't really want to. It's more looking at superficially and how the market might view it. But it seemed like a bit of a shame that hasn't resolved, and maybe that's causing a bit of short-term tension. But overall, risk on, I would say, is still the play. Markets are just having a bit of a consolidation, which is a really important thing to happen. And if we're going to say that the certain things are timed for political reasons, I'm not going to put a conspiracy theory hat on. I'm just going to say maybe things are timed in a certain way to help a political cause. It might be a bit early to be, spiking the guns for a rally. So maybe we want to see a consolidation in May, June, perhaps even into July, and then as we're approaching the elections, that's when things start to really move. So that would fit in with a kind of plan. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah, money coming into the system usually gets put into risk, what they call risk on assets. So the stock market, crypto is associated with that. What's funny is it would seem over time that Bitcoin would be a risk off asset as well, but it mostly doesn't act like that yet. Every once in a while we see it acting like that, but most of the time it doesn't. Basically, as money flows come in, then that money flow goes into Bitcoin and then other crypto. So we'll see. Like, it'll be interesting as possibly the Fed starts lowering interest rates closer to the election, which is probably going to happen. It always does. Then that money usually flows into the stock market as well as into crypto. And so it'll be interesting to see this summer how that plays out. And then later this year, I expect crypto, who knows what's going to happen over the coming 3 months. It could be slow, and that's all right if it is. What we're really waiting for is that blow off top that happens. That's where the real money is made, as long as you've taken your positions beforehand. The blow off top is a very risky time to be buying. It is a great time to have already had your positions and then to be taking some profits. All right. OX meme. OX wants us to look at ANKR. We can do that. Chris says, hey, Paul and Jay, thanks for coming in.
Hey, Chris.
And for all you do, happy Wednesday. 3YU. Hey, guys. This guy I've never seen. Joe Biden, I think that's the most popular icon you could have. He is such a popular guy. Everybody loves him.
Only 8 people watching. Lol, lol, lol.
It's a lot more than that. It's 41 across the different things that we're streaming to. That's cool. No worries.
I don't, as long as the people who are watching enjoy it, if it's 2 or 1 or 10 or 1,000,000, it doesn't matter. It's as long as the people who are watching it enjoy the show. So thank you for all being here.
Yeah, Planet Vampire says, smash that like button, y'all. Good job. Deck Tested has never heard of these projects. Where have you been? The ones we're going to look at today are specifically in the blockchain gaming space. And if you're not paying attention to blockchain gaming, cool. Maybe that's not your thing. It is going to be one of the biggest narratives this bull run. Bro, what's up? He says, hi, gents.
Hi.
And he asked if we could look at VELO if we have time. Probably. And Bro says, literally the most informative hour of my week. Yeah, thank you. Paul brings so much experience to the space. Most people don't realize there have been much bigger channels that have offered Manny from Definity lots of money to have Paul join their channels, and Paul has chosen to stay with us. So thank you for that, Paul.
Yeah, that's because Manny didn't tell me that. I'm only joking.
Yeah, when he shared that with me, I was like, oh, of course they would want to steal Paul. The way he sees things is amazing.
Well, that's very kind. Thank you. No, it's, we've got a family here, so we're gonna look after our family, as it were. So, and there's some amazing times coming. I mean, it really is such an interesting market, and it's going to be challenging, and there are going to be times when nobody gets everything right. I don't. I know you don't. There's nobody who you can't get everything right. We're just trying to stay on the right side of the major trends. But looking at evidence and seeing where it points to, and sometimes it's like we get some really strong signals that you want to go with, and sometimes you get some strong signals and it doesn't end up working out like that. But most of the time the probabilities are in our favor. So that's why it's I think, having worked in the city and listened to and seen how a lot of economists work, and this is not to disparage economists, it's they are trying to do their best to predict the markets, but the economic theory that they use has got some flaws in it that I guess they're not really willing to acknowledge. And it's only at the cutting edge where you guys are, where we are, when you're actually putting your own capital down and having to trade, that it forces you to rethink what works and what doesn't. And economics textbooks, you have to learn it if you go through your study. I mean, I studied economics, but it's like learning to drive and then actually driving on the road. It's two completely different things. The actual market doesn't work in the same way that's written in textbooks. And so that's why you need to do your own research. You know, that's really what I learned. You have to work it out yourself and see what works for you. But in terms of what I'm looking at the moment, if we have a very quick spin so we can get to the people's picks. I'm looking at this. So this is a chart of the Dow, and it's had its first correction. Let's start from where that was. So that first correction was started on the 18th of March, and it's very sharp correction, but actually not. It hasn't eaten too much into the trend, but it was frightening enough to, you know, take some of these weekly bars out that have been building up. So it was a big correction if you bought too late. It's obviously not if you were buying, you know, earlier and down here. And since then the market's bounced, but it's bounced and it's not in a new high. So we have to be careful of that, because something that I look out for is something called a double top. And if the market goes up and then comes down again and breaks this 37,630, that would tell us more about whether it wants to come down to this sort of level around 35,690 before it then goes up. But look, we take the trend from the March low, March 20th low following COVID, it's still up. The trend is still up, and we're going to go with that trend, which is what is the extent of the retracement, which is what we were asking at the top of the show. Now, why is it important? It's important because if money is still being generated on Wall Street, that money flows into riskier trades, riskier assets, and crypto is riskier assets. There's no two ways out of it. Bitcoin may be less risky than some of the altcoins, but there's risk in every trade. There's risk in not taking trades, so you can't avoid it. But it helps if you've got projects and there's a lot of money sloshing around, if we put it in those simple terms. And overall, the trends are still up. And I'll just quickly jump to the UK market, because this is burning into new highs. As you can see, it's taken out the previous peak at 8,000. It's sort of curved into it, and it's moving higher. So that's why it would be unusual if the market crashed from something like this. Is why I'm sort of a bit skeptical that that's what will happen. But you know, it for me, this is a trend, and I go with trends, and it seems fairly clear. The trends in the European markets also very bullish, so that's great. Gold and silver, and I mentioned platinum, they're all moving higher or getting ready to move even higher, as are base metals. And energy going sideways pretty much. Only coal seems to be moving much higher. And if we have a look at the what's happened with the US dollar, the dollar index. So if you haven't seen this before, this is a basket of currencies against the US dollar. So if you think about it as a dollar share, when this goes up, the dollar gets broadly stronger against a basket of currencies, and when it goes down, it gets broadly weaker. And what we're looking for, and I say looking for, I don't mean we are trying to make it happen. This is an expectation that when the dollar goes down, it acts as a kind of boost to the economy, because people borrow in dollars, and weakening dollars means that their home currencies have to generate less of those home currencies in order to pay back the debt. And it's also good for US companies that are exporting. So the stock market goes up, and it seems to help everybody when the dollar's weak, because it's the global reserve currency. At the moment, it's been in a range for quite some time. We're waiting for a big trend to come out like this one, and for it to potentially come down to this 90 level, which would suggest some very bullish things ahead. But at the moment, geopolitical risk and general worries are keeping it sort of pressed against the top end of this range. We had a very sharp move down on the non-farms last week, but the general feeling is that this is towards the end of a move rather than the beginning, and we should start to see it move down soon. So we'll see how that plays out, but that would really help crypto assets. And on top of that, Asia and the Asian markets are doing very well, particularly China and Hong Kong, which were predicted to be in bear markets because of their deflationary situation, but they've turned around really fast, and that's another source of liquidity, if you like, that will help to pump lots of money into these crypto projects.
Yeah, it seems like China may be going more pro crypto, and there's some paths that maybe mainland China can buy this new Bitcoin ETF coming up. So that could be a huge source of incoming funds. It does make sense to me that over time, Bitcoin is going to become the new standard. And the dollar was the standard since what? Was it the 70s or the 50s? I think since the 50s, the end of World War II, right? And the agreements that came after that, the standard for what oil was traded in, I see a bunch of companies or countries going towards Bitcoin being what oil is traded in. And if that happens, Bitcoin is going to become the new standard. And Bitcoin is going to be adopted by way more countries. And I don't see at this point why it doesn't continue to go that way, why the snowball doesn't continue rolling down this hill and getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And Bitcoin's been that snowball. So I've been in crypto since 2017, 7 years now. And the adoption back then in 2017, the biggest player that was in crypto was John McAfee and McAfee, or however you want to say it. And he was very much pro crypto. And now we have, then it was, a few bigger players, that were saying, oh yeah, crypto is going to be the big thing. Bitcoin's going to be the big thing. And now we have BlackRock and Larry Fink going around sharing Bitcoin with everyone. So that snowball continues to get bigger. And as Bitcoin gets bigger, it brings more attention to what's really happening with blockchain and crypto, which is what we call Web3, or unlocking the internet to do things it could not do before without blockchain and cryptographic encryption, such as ownership in video games. And we're going to talk about some blockchain video games in a bit and go through some of those projects. I think that is one of the biggest narratives of this coming bull run. And it's been quiet on blockchain gaming, which is funny. A couple of things. These are coupled together. This comment, only 8 people watching. Of course, there's a lot more people watching now, and a bunch watch it on replay. And this comment, never heard of these projects. What's funny about that is they kind of go together in that covering projects that are low, that nobody is talking about. YouTube doesn't push out the videos because nobody's talking about these projects. Why is nobody talking about them? Well, because the price is low. People talk about things when the price has gone way high, and people are excited about it, buying high, thinking it's going higher. But that's not how real investors do things. Real investors are looking for those projects nobody is talking about that have significant value, and they find that significant value either through really knowing charting really well, and they can see what's happening in the charts, or through fundamental analysis, where they understand the fundamentals behind it, and they're making probability guesses for where it goes from here. And so that's my approach, is the fundamental analysis combined with probability guesses. And Paul's background is definitely on the price analysis side. All right. So yeah,
I think
what would you say is happening with Bitcoin?
Well, I'd say you make a very good point when you say that. That's a problem with kind of legacy media, or getting your financial information by watching, reading the press. And again, it's not that they're trying to do a bad job. It's just that when there's no story, there's nothing to print. And so the time to look at a project is when nobody's looking at it. And if nobody's looking at it, the editor will say, well, why should we look at this project? There's nothing interesting to say about it. Then, of course, when this certain projects taking over the world are doing brilliantly, like Nvidia was, I saw it in a mainstream newspaper in the UK, somebody talking about how you had to buy it, but years ago, you don't hear anything. And that happens all the time. It's a cyclical thing. it's also why I look at charts, because when charts are turning around, you see it in the price action first. You see it burning up. All the coins that were related to AI were moving up way before people were talking about them. And then, of course, it all gets into the press and it gets a bit overheated. Then it comes back and it has its next phase. That's when you're hearing too much noise outside of kind of this forum, say, then things are worrying. Then you've got to be much more careful, because it's because of the kind of foresight that you've got as to where this project might be is coming to fruition. It's nearer the end of it, potentially, or the end of a phase of it, indeed, when you're seeing it in the mainstream press. So they'll only talk about it when it's near the end, and that's why it's so interesting to hear what you want to look at and hear you talk about it on a fundamental point of view, because in many ways I wouldn't look at them unless you'd mention them. So
yeah, it's interesting. When I was doing crypto 2017, I followed that path of chasing what was hot because I didn't know what I was doing. I thought people with a YouTube channel, they had been in crypto for longer than me, so I figured they must know what they're talking about and what they thought was hot. I then would do a little bit of analysis, but what kind of analysis could I do? I was brand new. I was overwhelmed, like drinking from a fire hose, what all this crypto stuff was about. And so I was buying what was hot, hoping it went hotter, or buying what was high, hoping it went higher. And it worked out okay because it was 2017. It was in the middle of the bull run. And then because I didn't understand cycles, everything crashed down. And so I'd put about 15,000 in, turned into about 165 to 175,000. And then it went down to 3,000. And because of my background in real estate investing and understanding cycles, I then started studying more about, does crypto have a cycle? Oh my gosh, crypto, Bitcoin especially, has this 4-year cycle. It's a little bit less than 4 years, and it goes parabolic every 4 years, almost predictably. It's like, oh my gosh. So then I realized, well, it had now gone to lows. So lows are a good time to buy. So most people left the crypto space at that time. I like buying low so that I can later sell high. And so I was loading up. And during that bear market, I wasn't very good at crypto analysis yet. In fact, I think I did quite terrible. What I invested in over that coming bear market, only 35% of what I invested in survived into the coming bull market. And still yet, even with that, my portfolio went 20x from what I had invested. From the bottom, it went 100x up. So I was like, wow, I was quite bad at this, but this way of investing works quite well. What if I can get better at researching projects and figuring out what survives? So it's helpful to go through a full cycle so I could see what had a better chance of surviving. It just takes some of that experience. It is a different way to approach it than you'll see on most YouTube channels and most people out there. And that's cool. They can do their thing. I know that if I talked about what was hot, my YouTube channel would get way bigger. I'd get way more views. The algorithm would push it out way more. And that's cool. There's lots of people that do that route. Specifically, we go a very different direction, which is covering projects, especially giving them airtime when I think that they're cheap, because that's when I'm interested in them and I'm buying low, and sharing with you what I like about things and why I like it and why I'm making the choices that I do, because I'm hoping to teach this methodology to a bunch of you so that you understand fundamental analysis as well as investing when nobody else is investing, like buying when nobody else is buying, and then selling when everybody else is buying. And it works quite well. The real Randy Chavez, thank you for joining us. Rainmakers to the moon, thank you for the super chat. Abe says, I'm here, gents. Sorry, early morning fire. Abe is fighting fires in California.
Oh, wow.
Let's talk about Chuck for a second. Chuck is a meme coin. I just don't do meme coins. Now, Chuck has done some things right, which is cool. They went on to base chain early, so they've got some benefit from that. And Chuck, I know the people behind Chuck, and I know, the promoters or the different YouTube people promoting it. And I got offered to promote it. It's just, I won't do meme coins no matter what. And so I don't promote Chuck. I don't buy Chuck. I don't believe in it. That's not that you can't make money on meme coins. A bunch of people have made good money on this because they bought early. I won't do an analysis on it because the challenge with meme coins is it's musical chairs. And eventually people are stuck with no chair, and then it usually reverses hard. Now with meme coin, if you get enough trajectory to get to the moon, sometimes you're then around permanently. Like Pepe has done that, Dogecoin has done that, and what's it called? The other big one that everyone buys. I can't even remember the name. I really don't invest in meme coins because they do all right. The long-term fundamentals behind them, there are no fundamentals. It's just a fun coin. And over 99% of meme coins go really low, essentially evaporate and disappear. And so I just don't like the probabilities. It's not to say you can't make money on meme coins. You can make money on the lottery. It's just your probabilities are terrible. And so I don't take things that the probabilities are terrible. So, yeah.
Shiba Inu, was that the one you're talking about?
Shiba Inu, yeah, is the other big meme coin that definitely hit the trajectory it needed to make it into permanence, which they'll probably be around permanently. But we'll see. There's no fundamentals really behind it. And some are trying to then put some fundamentals behind it. That's like putting the cart before the horse. Like they're really just a meme coin that new people come in and they buy because there's not much to wrap their mind around. They're just buying into the fun. And so it's less overwhelming to them. But I look for projects with long-term substance, a business idea, and essentially I'm investing in businesses and the ideas behind it rather than, I feel like meme coins are more like the crypto casino. And I'm glad a bunch of people have made money on Chuck. It's not probably a great time to be buying Chuck because some people are up 40x already or 80x if they bought very, very early, like in the pre-sale. I guess there was some kind of pre-sale. Cool. A lot of the gains have been made. To think that it's going to do another 80x from here, it would have to perform in the top 0.1% of meme coins for that to be the case. And so the probabilities are just poor. I can say Jordan continues to pump out really cool memes that he generates through AI. I mean, Chuck gets the benefit of AI. You can make these memes that you can say, put these prompts in there, and it does these really good graphics for you. And so they've been pumping out really good graphics that are fun, that have helped it continue to get momentum, even while the market's been down. Some point that may fall off. I don't know. I just like things where I'm investing in the team behind it. I'm investing in their ideas behind it. And then being patient because like blockchain gaming, for whatever reason, in October of last year, Alex Becker, who has one of the largest crypto YouTube followings, covered blockchain gaming. And then all of blockchain gaming then pumped. And it pumped early. So it pumped up and then it's kind of come back and pulled back. Well, cool. I like buying low. I in some ways was frustrated that Alex Becker covered it, pumped the prices way up. And then it's nice that they've come back down a bunch. They're not quite as cheap, but they're getting really cheap. And it's a good time to cover them again because as an investor, I like buying low. So a lot of these picks are actually coming from suggestions on last week's video. And they all happen to be in blockchain gaming, which tells me you guys are thinking right because you're thinking about things when they're quote unquote boring, when Deck Tested has never heard of these projects. And he probably sees that as a bad thing. I don't see that as a bad thing at all. I invested in Axie Infinity when nobody had heard of it. I invested in the OMI token well before the 2021 run. I invested in 2018 when nobody had heard of it. All right, so let's get into some of the altcoins.
Should we have just a quick look at Bitcoin?
Yeah, let's do it
before we do that. Yeah, so just to say, we're still in this consolidation correction. The price action from a technical point of view, it broke this big level 59,421 and then reversed straight out of it, went right back into this range, still making lower highs. It's, for me, I think you still just got to avoid it for now until this settles down and shows that it wants to at least break this pattern of lower highs. A consolidation is a good sign, and maybe it wants to get to this trend line. So we'll see if it touches this trend line, whether that's the first bouncing off point. it could get a little bit more aggressive at below 56,425, which was where it bounced there. I was looking for 53,410. I thought that was quite a nice place for it to hit. It be a fairly decent correction and then rally back up again. Given the volatility and the way it's moving down, we could still hit those levels. But for the moment, it's sidelines until this correction has played out. But once again, we take a step back and look at the big picture. The trend is still up. It's just the trend rate has accelerated from October last year, which was the start of the major bull market, or the breaking into the start of the move that then took us into new highs in the equity markets. And all that's happening is it's having a consolidation year, the previous high. But there will be all it's doing really is making this whole area so much more important, even though it's already really important. The fact that it was a high back in April 21, another high around November 21, and then it came into a new high here, broke out, came back down again. When it finally leaves this area behind, it's not going to just go to sort of 75, 77 or 80,000. It's going to hit 100, I would have thought. That should be the net effect of it clearing this level. But for now, short-term traders are probably going to sit on their hands, having sort of taken some profit in this move up before it starts its move again. So we just have to be on alert for signs that this correction is over. But for the moment, it just feels like it's ongoing.
Yeah. Now, do you think when it hits that trend line, the trend line that it has been falling for the last little bit, do you think maybe it continues up from there?
I think I think it's worth a buy against it. I don't tell the market what it will do. I just wait to see if it does it. And if it does do that, then the upside is quite considerable. So I'd want to see it respect it first, and then once it's respected it, then it would be shown to be a buy. But yeah, it could be there, or it may come back to the 200-day moving average, which is kind of down here a little bit. So that would be reasonable. What I'm looking for is what looks like a reasonable correction in the trend. If it goes beyond that, then it's starting to tell me something else, like perhaps this is turning into something more significant. But sentiment doesn't feel like it. There was obviously a lot of strong sentiment to buy on the way up and the halving and everything else, and all the people that missed it from the major low who started piling in late, and they're obviously being sort of taken out bit by bit. But as we said again at the top of the show, it doesn't feel like a major top. It just feels like an interim top. So looking for buy levels is a very reasonable thing to be doing. Trend lines are good for that. Previous support is good for that as well. Looking at percentage retracements is good for that. So we can look at, let's have a look. Let's see. We take this high and then pull it down. So far, we've got about 22%. So about 25% is a good technical level, which actually comes in here at the 38.2. So that would be a really interesting point from a Fibonacci point of view, 38.2% plus a 25% obviously correction from the top. So that's a level that I'd be looking at around 54,000. So so we'll see where the market wants to buy it, but there's some good levels approaching, or would be approaching, when it takes out this this support point that it kind of dipped below and went back straight over before. But either way, this tells me it's a correction because of the way corrections are always difficult. They're never smooth. They're hard to trade. They're hard to trade in both directions. You buy it and it goes down, and then you sell it and it goes up, and that's very, very typical.
Yeah, they're scary too. It's funny. I saw this meme during the bear market of the line of people there were to buy Bitcoin at 65,000, and it showed it wrapped around the building. And then at 20,000, or I think it bottomed at like 16 or 17,000 or somewhere around there. There was nobody in line. And it's funny that it really does work that way, that most people can't buy when things are low. and everyone's trying to buy when they're high. Now, it's not truly the case that everyone's trying to buy when they're high. About 5% of people do really, really well in trading because they understand counter trading. And so they just counter trade the sentiment. So in other words, they're buying when nobody is buying and they're selling when everybody's trying to buy. And that's how you make lots of money in crypto and anything for that matter. I like crypto because the amount of volatility is so high. And so those lows are extremely low and those highs are extremely high. And so if you're buying at those lows and then selling at those highs, the amount of money you make is tremendous. I've never seen anything like it with such a compressed 4-year cycle where there's about 2 years between when the lows are and the highs are. And so over a 2-year period, the amount of money you can make during that time is crazy compared to everything else. Let's take a look at some of these altcoins. Now, this first one, Senate, the bigger project that this is behind is Sidus. Now, you may have heard of Sidus, S-I-D-U-S. I like their Senate token better because I'll show you why in a minute, but this is the token associated with Sidus, or one of the 2 tokens.
Yeah. So this chart here is given an update. I did check the price. So it's the 8th of May, but it shows the 7th, but the price is very close to here. So it's near as damn it the same. Overall, we're still in a correction. And I think that's still got further to go. I think we talked about it on Friday. That hasn't really changed. You know, I'd kind of just go with pretty much what we were saying before. It's a wait for me because this correction needs to show some strength. It needs to show a bit of buying power in order to, indicate that the trend is changing from this high. So all of this year, it's basically been in a correction. And I want to see that pattern change. Now, it's not like it's going down in this sort of fashion where it's in a new downward trend, a fresh downward trend, making new lows, which would be a definite sell for me. It is correcting from a very sharp upward move. So at some point within this trend, people are going to say, smart people like you guys who read the projects and say this is too cheap, they'll step in and buy. So I'm waiting to see that. And when I see it cheap enough, and from your perspective, from the fundamentals, that could be the first sign that this wants to rejoin this next phase of the trend. That's a very sharp upward move. This is a very convoluted downward trend, which is very typical of corrections. So for the moment, it's a wait for me, but I'm expecting it to dig its heels in at some point. And we could look at some levels, maybe 51 cents, 5.1 cents. This was an important low before as well, around 6 cents. So if it comes into those levels, there's certain points where you can just say, I'll have a little nibble here and see. And if it doesn't work, you can bail out. But really what I want to see is take out these highs, this pattern of reducing or lower highs, this high, and this high are setting a trend. So even if it rallies up to here and then comes down again, that's still in a downward trend. What I want to see is it make a higher low and then go through. So that gives us a place to draw a trend line from to show that it's now changing its dynamic. So for the moment, for me, it's a wait.
Awesome. So I'm going to share a little bit more context on Senate and Cetus. So this is the Senate token, which I like the price on this better than the Cetus token. Here is the Cetus token. And so the Cetus token itself has a $63 million market cap. And the Senate token is at an $8 million market cap. So it's about 1/8 the price of the other token. The value between the two, I feel like they're pretty comparable. I mean, maybe the Cetus token might be slightly better, might be. The reason why I think the Cetus token is a lot higher is that we're not in the period in the market that people are doing in-depth fundamental analysis in general. So when Alex Becker talked about Cetus, which is one of the ones that he talked about, people just went in and bought the Cetus token, which drove up the market cap of the Cetus token tremendously high from its lows right before he talked about it, right here. And it went crazy up. So what did it do? Like Is that 100x? No, maybe. No, less than 100x. It went up from here. When you start talking that many zeros, I cover in it, but it went up tremendously. It then went up some more just recently when it got some more coverage as a top crypto project. But a lot of people don't know the fundamentals behind CDIS to know that there's two tokens to this project. Is the governance token, as well as it has some other properties that you need for other things too. So CDIS you need for some things in game, and Senate you need for other things in the game. And so the Senate token was all the way here at 2 cents when I was covering it. And then it went 30x to about, well, 36 cents. So it went, not 30x, it went 15x, 18x from when I was covering it. And now it's pulled back, so it's starting to get juicy again. And at this price, it's juicy. It's just not as juicy it was back here, and maybe it will continue to pull back further. The project itself is called CDIS Heroes. They have 435,000 followers on Twitter. You can get a little bit of a feel here. It looks like they're running some kind of special where you can get a Frank Mueller Genevieve watch. This is Dan Combe, who's really good founder. Evan Luther is tweeting him out here. Evan is a lot of following the crypto space. He's been an OG crypto investor, made tens of millions of dollars through blockchain investing, probably into the 100 million range from the past like 8 years. And he's a good friend of the project as well as an investor in the project. Yeah, so this is a little bit about CDIS. I guess we can go to their website. Let's see. So you kind of get a feel. Great job on the website, giving you an idea of some of the things going on. Looks like they're doing a launch pad. 14 plus games in development. New partnerships. Yeah, great project. I think CDIS is now, their Senate token particularly is in the undervalued category. I would give it a buy. Not a huge buy at these prices, but it's starting to be interesting when it's like rebuy and hope it goes cheaper. All right, so a good one to be covering. Thank goodness it's come back some. I think blockchain gaming is a narrative that goes absolutely massive in the coming, I don't know, 9 months that a lot of people aren't thinking about right now, which brings us to our next one to look at, which is Cornucopias Copi token.
Yeah. By the way, I've just remembered something I wanted to mention from before about the meme tokens. I think it's actually quite interesting that we're seeing them. I think it's an interesting insight into the amount of risk that people want to take. So even though you might not want to buy them, it's actually useful to keep an eye on how meme tokens are performing, because I think when we're near the top, or the big top of everything, you'll see those go first because there's nothing supporting them. And the more meme coins that pump, like you say, you can make money out of them. There were many .com companies that were making no profits that went up massively. So it's not that you can't make money out of them. It's just that you have to know when to get out. And I think from a market perspective, they will serve a useful purpose of telling us when the broader market is going down. So I think it's interesting. The more of those coins that come on, the more it's telling me, actually, we are still in for another big move because there is this interest to buy these meme coins. But I just also want to ask a question on Senate. It said there's 14 plus games in development. I mean, I'm not a games expert, but from what I can see, usually big gaming companies have a few titles, but they make money on big name titles. So having lots of games in development, is that better than having just a few really good ones? I mean, there must be a reason why they want 14, but really what you need is 1 or 2 really big ones that work, right?
Yeah, there's a new thing going on that blockchain allows where you can have your games interact with the assets together. Illuvium's doing this, where 3 titles that they'll be releasing coming up all work together. And so you can produce a resource needed in another one in one type of game. You can then buy it in the other one that you need to use, and you can acquire some different things that are useful in another thing. And so it creates an economy between them too. And so I haven't talked to Dan in quite a while to see what these 14 plus games are about. My guess is a lot of them are just smaller, quicker to develop games that maybe they catch on and maybe they don't. It is better to have a few great titles than a whole bunch of smaller ones that don't catch any traction. They have produced really a quite addicting game that's out already. I played it, and you sit down to try to play it for 15 minutes. You end up playing it for like 3 hours, which is a really good sign. It's fairly simple in its nature, and it's, it catches your attention. It's an ideal game that they're moving to mobile. But how it all ends up working together, for me, is a little bit harder to see than what I can see with Illuvium, which we'll be covering next.
Sure.
This idea of being able to own the assets that you acquire in these games and being able to freely trade them for something of monetary value, say ETH or some token that can be traded for ETH, and ETH can easily be traded in for dollars or whatever currency of the country you're in, is fascinating, and which is why I think all of gaming is going to go to blockchain gaming in the coming 4 or 5 years.
Interesting. Really interesting.
And it's such a huge, gaming is so much money is spent on gaming.
Oh yeah.
And I
More
think
than films.
when it goes to where you can actually make money in the games, the amount of new business money that comes in, because then you'll essentially be able to run businesses within the games. The amount of new investment capital that comes in will be tremendous too. And we saw some of that with Axie Infinity. Some of the reason why Axie Infinity went so parabolic is business money was coming in to buy essentially businesses that operated within the game.
Yeah. So that's really interesting. So the next one was Cornucopias, isn't it? As opposed to Illuvium.
Yeah.
Yeah. So on that, we are still in a bit of a correction. This price update of just checking it here, it says the 2nd of May on a daily chart. It is around here. I've checked on the other chart, but it's not got a lot of data, so I'm just going to use this one. But it's fairly up to date as to where the price is. Again, this is just a sideways chart. If we take it from here, it's an upward trend. It peaked early, and it's having a correction. I think it's going to dig its heels in somewhere around this 4.8 to maybe up to this level here, 5.2 area, which is very close to now. You see, it's actually just sort of touching it now. So longer term, I think it's interesting. It has the same sort of pattern that I was talking about with Senate, where you've got these lower highs, and they need to be broken to fully indicate that the trend is changing. And whilst we're in this broader consolidation period, it may try and test a bit lower, may even come into this downward trend here, but it's holding up okay. And I like the fact that it did actually break higher ahead of everything else, and it's having its consolidation. That's fine, but I do think in the very short term, I think it's a wait, just because it's still consolidating and it needs to break at least this downward trend line and pretty much this one up here before I get excited about it. But also, I can see how one would be tempted to add a little bit or to have a nibble at current levels because it's on a support point and in this zone. So if we can wear a retracement lower, I know you like to say buy and hope it goes lower. That could be something that I would consider, but it would really be no expectation of it moving now, more of an expectation as we're moving into the next big phase where everything starts to rally. And the first thing that would indicate that to me would be a break of this first trend line and then the next one up here. So that's that one. And Cornucopias, I think, is fairly similar, but it is consolidating on a trend line. It did try and go through. The volume has been going down, which I mentioned before. I think that's a good sign here because on corrections, you don't want to see volume going up. If volume starts to go up, it means that the market is selling more aggressively. So it does feel like it is in a corrective phase still, but so's most things. So it's trying to dig its heels in around $84, which is a good sign. There's lots of support there. I can see why that would happen. It's not trending up as yet. It's just doing enough to hold it, keep it in a holding pattern where it is now. So I would be a little cautious that if everything has another move down, it might actually pull it down with it. But bigger picture, this is turned. You know, the trend has turned. This was the downward trend. This is the basing phase, and this next move should be, you know, beyond 160. I would say once we figured out where it wants to stop, and this could be it. It's just I'm being a little more cautious in this short-term correction before it goes back up. And again, I can understand nibbling happening at these levels because it's had a very decent correction off the high. The lows are also higher than these previous lows. So if it does manage to hold in here, it would be really a good place to get excited about it. I don't mind paying a bit more once it's crossed some resistance. So, you know, 110 is the first area where I would say I wouldn't want to be missing it if it's taken out 110, because that would then show that this is a proper base and it's moving higher. And I'd be looking for 130 to 160 as a short-term target, but realistically, you know, we'd be looking much beyond that. And for a much longer term trade, you know, you could trade it short term, but I think for me, the outlook is much longer than that.
Yes, if we could just get Alex Becker to stay away from covering crypto again for a while, so blockchain gaming can come down some more and people can continue to forget about it, because I like cheap prices better than higher prices at this point in the market. Now, at some point, I definitely want the higher prices, but I want those higher prices after Bitcoin breaks 100,000 and a lot of people start funneling into crypto, and then they start doing deeper research. And it's that research phase that people start to become aware of some of these projects, like the ones we're talking about. They'll be being talked about a whole lot then. Right now, they're not on a lot of people's minds, and that's cool because I feel like it's buy time. And when it's buy time, I want it as cheap as possible. Now, it's not as cheap as it was, because I was covering Illuvium when it was back here. That's not Illuvium. Let me share. There we go. This is Illuvium. And Illuvium was way back here. And at $40, I was like, oh my gosh, this is too good, too juicy to pass up. Could go lower from here, because at the time it wasn't clear if it'd keep going down. But at $40, it was an amazing buy. It then went to $160 and has pulled back to a juicy level at just under $90. So it's juicy again. They recently released their private beta 4, which I've been able to get access to and playing, and it's quite good. It right now is just Illuvium Overworld and the Arena. So the Arena is one game. Overworld is a separate game, but you can acquire, think of it like Pokemon, and that you can go capture Pokemon and then you can take them to the arena. So in this game, they call them alluvials. So in Overworld, you can go and you can capture resources as well as alluvials that can then be used in the arena. So you can go capture your own in Overworld and then bring them into the arena to battle, or you can buy them from someone else who captured them. Then Illuvium Zero is a place where you it's a land game that will also be on mobile, I believe, that you can acquire fuel, and fuel is needed in Overworld to be able to travel, as well as to essentially make the Pokeball so that you can capture the alluvials. They call them shards in Illuvium, but it's very much like a Pokemon type game. I suspect it gets some really good traction, that people are really going to like the game, and gamers will like the game, and they'll like the monetary aspects of it. That I think it'll be launching about the time really crypto awareness is hitting worldwide again. And if so, then it has potential to do really good. I'm going to backtrack a little bit to, well, let me finish Illuvium and then we'll go to Cornucopias. I really loved it at this price. It's getting juicy again. I would love for it to get juicier and for more people to forget about it. One of the cool things about Illuvium's token is by taking the token and then staking it, they distribute a share of their revenues with the token stakers. And that's pretty powerful. There aren't a lot of projects in crypto that do that. And I suspect at certain points their revenues are going to get quite high as they make a fraction of trades that go on their marketplace, as well as when fuel gets sold into the marketplace. I don't love how this mechanism works, but they'll make a ton of revenue when this happens. So somebody harvests 100 of, say, Krypton fuel, and they sell that. It'll actually duplicate it so that there's now 2,000 total or 1,900 additional created, and they will keep the revenues to distribute to the token holders on that 1,900. The person selling the 100 fuel gets, well, the part of that 100 fuel. So that is how I guess their ideal was when they sold the token. They said, well, the revenues generated in the game will be distributed to the token holders. And so when they later introduced land, and then land would then have fuel, so the Illuvium Zero game with the land, and with the land you could generate fuel, they said, well, we'll find a way to give you 5% of the revenues. And so on the fuel side, when you harvest fuel, that's kind of how the mechanism works. I think with that mechanism, it greatly benefits the token holders more than the land holders. So there's some strong incentives to hold the token, stake it, and make revenues. Now, I personally hold the token, but I'm not staking them, because when the game starts producing major revenues, people are likely at that time to go crazy for the token. And I want to have them fully unlocked and sellable at that time, because say the passive returns on staking the tokens, maybe you make 40% passive returns that year by staking the token. Well, that's cool. But during that time when awareness hits really good, the token might go up from where it is now, might go up 30x to 40x, maybe even 100x. And I just want it fully liquid to go ahead and take my gains out then. So I always ask myself when I'm looking at a token, does it have the potential to go 100x from here? And at $40, I felt like the potential for it to go 100x from there was quite strong. At $90, I think it still has potential to go 100x. It's a little bit harder. The more it comes down from here, the more likely it is that it can hit that 100x threshold that I really love to see. And so when you look over at identifying, can it do 100x from here? One of the bigger numbers to look at is this market cap. So right now it's at 337 million. So to hit 100x from here, this would have to go to $33 billion market cap or higher to do 100x from here. Is that possible? Well, Axie Infinity last bull run, I think, hit over 15 billion, maybe even 20 billion. So that realm is reachable if Illuvium's game gets massive traction during the bigger bull run. Cool. So for me, it's a buy at this price. Another major contender for a top game is Cornucopias, which is why I'm so interested in it. Now, I own Cornucopias token. I have for a very long time. I also have a ton of land in Cornucopias for their game, their upcoming game. And so right now their token is back down to 5 cents. It was recently all the way up to 13 cents back in December. So it also benefited from the blockchain gaming run. It hit a little bit late, and I called it as undervalued back in this time frame. And then it massively went up from there. So it went from like 2.7 cents up to 13 cents. And now it's pulling back down. So it's pretty juicy buy at this range. I definitely would say it's a buy, and I hope it gets even cheaper from here so that, well, when you buy it, you can buy more for less, essentially. All right. Let's see. The next one is Myria. All right.
Yeah.
Myria.
So all these charts are looking, fairly similar in their structure, in how they're sort of correcting, um, and Myria is the same. So the fact that they're all in the same sector is interesting because it shows that very different projects are being um, thought of by the market as a sector play as opposed to an individual play. So, what will show us which ones are going to be the stronger ones will be the first ones that break out to the upside and lead the way higher when everything else starts to move up. To be fair, they're all in some form of correction, as opposed to in strong bear markets. So, we've seen some really good runs up and the market's coming down. It's just from a technical point of view, we're looking to see where support is coming in. And again, just to repeat what I said earlier, it's you guys who see the value and say this has gone far enough that then stops these early kind of fundamental analysis that will show where the support levels are. Now, for me, I don't know whether that's here or whether it's much lower, but there is some signs that the brakes are being put on the correction, and there's some good reasons why, 5.5%, is that? Yeah, half a cent is where good support should be. We've got it right here, from before. So this was the breakout point where we got some strong move to the upside, some good buying, early buying. Then there was some panic buying that came in here, and that was corrected. So perhaps that's now, you know, exiting the market, pushing it down a little bit. Once that's played out, the next move up can start. So good support around this level here at half a cent. It may go a little bit lower into this zone, which was the previous all-time high or the previous high. Good consolidation here before it went up. I think the people who bought it here will be keen to buy it again at those levels. But as a fail-safe, as a kind of signal and tripwire for me to get in, I need to see some form of short-term strength which the market can build on. First step is that it stops going down, which it's done that. Next step would be it's actually starting to trend up. And that gets confirmed when this trend line breaks. We could also draw in another resistance line that comes in across the top here. That would be more significant, because it's across more significant tops. The rate of decline is quite fast here, so it can easily break that. A strong trend line that's either up or down, a very steep angle in either direction. It's very easy to break that. It's harder to break one that has a more shallow angle. So therefore, it's more important when it breaks one of a more shallow angle rather than a steep one. But by the same token, it's a signal. So if it does break it, that's the first sign. And if we look at the first resistance within that range, at 0.7 of a cent, that to me is a really interesting buy point because it failed to get above it 1, 2, 3, 4 times next to a trend line. If it then breaks the trend line and then gets above it, it's telling me this is actually becoming quite a significant support point, and it's gone beyond it. So there has been some good buying, but that's all if it does that. It hasn't done that yet. So in the short term, I'm going to be cautious and just say I want to revisit this in a couple of weeks' time and say it's a wait. But as I said before, I can understand why people might want to be, looking at these current levels.
Yeah, it's starting to get juicy. It's not as juicy as it was. And what's funny is a lot of people have misconceptions about how the crypto market works. I remember I was covering it back when the prices were really cheap. And so the prices were bouncing in these levels here. And some comments in the stream came through and they're like, oh, Myria won't do well until they launch a new game that really hits big. And that's not going to be for months or years. And I disagreed with them. I said, all that has to happen is blockchain gaming needs to come into the narrative, and Myria is one of the biggest potential blockchain gaming projects. And so all that has to happen is blockchain gaming narrative hits. What happened? Well, they didn't launch a game. The blockchain gaming narrative hit, and the price went from these levels where it was 0.001 cents, or essentially 0.1 cent, it was trading between that to 0.17 cents, and it broke to the upside and went all the way 10x about from the average of those. So if you had gotten it at 0.0011, essentially it went about 13x from there. And then it traded sideways, and it's pulling back and correcting downwards. So it's still up about 3x from the 0.17 price. So it's at 0.61. And hopefully it gets cheaper. Hopefully it comes back down to these levels, which would be great. And it looks like it wants to. If it continues down, it probably will hit these levels, which would be a really good buy again. I just don't think it's going to hit these lower levels again. That people that missed out on that, they missed out on that. Will Myria be big? Well, there's a lot of projects building on top of Myria's L2. And so if some of those combined with the ones that they're building themselves hit big, well, then it will be a big deal. Boss fighters, I don't know, that might end up being big. Nitro, they've got a cricket game. I don't know a lot about cricket, but there's a lot of people in India and the UK that play cricket, and cricket's really big in those parts of the world. If they end up getting a fraction of the people from India playing this, it could do really well. So we'll see. I do really like Jonathan Teo, the CEO of this project. I spoke with him on a video call a couple of years ago. And then after speaking with him, I invested over 100,000 in this project myself. So I believe in it. Do I know that this is going to work out? No, I just think the probabilities are really strong, and that's why I invested so heavily in it myself. I like Myria. Now, between them, like, I think Illuvium has one of the greatest chances to become one of the front runners of blockchain gaming in this coming narrative, but their market cap somewhat reflects that in that it's 300 million. Myria's market cap is 113 million. So it's about 1/3 the market cap right now. Myria is a little bit more risky, and so that's reflected in it. All these ones that we looked at today so far, I think are all good contenders for doing well in this coming blockchain gaming run. Let's see. I want to get to some of those suggestions. These are all the ones we had scheduled to look at. ANKR was one of the ones somebody asked us to take a look at. We looked at that a little bit ago. Why don't we take a look at ANKR again, see what's going on with the price?
Yeah. Okay. So ANKR, is that the update? Near as damn it, the current price. Just checking. I don't know why it doesn't give us the absolute day, but anyway. So yeah, this is still sideways. I like it for the long term. Short term, it's in a consolidation. Trend is up from this low, but it is consolidating after it tried to break out here. If we take the trend from this point to here, it's literally just oscillating. This was a high, this was a low, and it's on the lower side at the moment. So it does have a lot of upside potential. Whether it's ready to break out at right now this week, it doesn't seem to be. I think it's just going to keep going sideways for the moment. So short term, I'd say it's a wait, but longer term, I do like the fact that it's holding on to gains. It's holding on to gains from quite some time ago as well, and these lows are lifting up, which shows signs of acceleration. There is a lot of resistance up here. There has to be, because that was the top of this phase of this first bull market, and you see how long it took to distribute that and then go into its downward trend. So because of that, there will be a lot of resistance, a lot of wood to chop, as we say, to get through those stale longs that were holding it from here. But a good sign is that it's trying to do that, and a move through 6.5 cents, which is this high here, would be a very good sign, especially given that these lows are rising. So it's a short-term wait, I think, but I could be tempted to buy it and just put it on the back burner. But given that we are going to be looking at it week to week, I think we can finesse it a bit more. So short-term wait, long-term buy.
All right. So short-term wait, long-term buy. So short-term wait, long-term buy. I like the way the chart is setting up on this. Now, in the crypto space, you can only keep track of so much, and it's hard to keep track of everything. So ANKR is one that I'm just somewhat familiar with. I'm not deeply familiar with it. It's been around for a long time. And so you saw that it went parabolic in the previous bull run. So a lot of the DeFi related projects ran in the early part of the year. And then they had somewhat of a pump later October when everyone was talking about, what was it? I guess Facebook changed their name to Meta, and then there was this huge metaverse run. So we had like this weird double top that happened last bull cycle. And then we have this nice juicy bear market with this nice rounded bottom. And it started to pick up. And then usually even the runs, see how back here there was an early run and then it came back down. So we get those, and maybe it comes back a little bit cheaper. Their market cap's at 460 million. I can't say I know enough about the team behind this and the fundamentals to give a really deep analysis on ANKR. It's just kind of been there for forever. I'm just vaguely aware of it. I would say over half my portfolio is in the blockchain gaming space, and the other half is in specific projects that I know a bunch about. And so I generally like where the chart is at. I would like to see it pull back more. So for me, it's just a wait. And if it pulls back nicely from here, maybe it would then be a buy. So where can a project like this go to? Well, it was at almost 20 cents. Now, back when it went so high, one of the things that was going on was Luna was going crazy, and you could stake Luna on ANKR, or you could stake UST on ANKR and get like 20% returns on it. That is until UST crashed and Luna crashed, and then your holdings became absolutely worthless. So I was familiar with ANKR from that standpoint and actually used it to stake some UST on to try it out. And I haven't really followed it since then. What they're doing now, I can't say I know, other than that they've been somewhat in the DeFi space. Their website doesn't tell you a ton. Last time I looked at it, it's kind of like build any Web3 project with leading performance. That doesn't really tell me what you do. The fastest, most reliable connection to Web3. Okay, cool. They have a Web3 API, but again, what is going on? Seamless staking experiences and integration. So this is what essentially they use to create the UST staking. So that makes sense. So plug into liquidity, stake across chains. So the UST being staked, this was just one of the things that could be staked on there, which is how I was using it. But there's a lot more you could stake on it. So generally this is in the DeFi space. Yeah. So we'll see. Far as I can tell, very professional website. I don't know the team behind it or where their plan is to go. It looks like generally a lot of the use case is that different places are using their technology to set up staking apps. Cool. All right. Moderately interesting to me is all. All right, so it's definitely a wait. I want to just see it come down a little bit cheaper. The chart setup is good. You have this really nice juicy base. If it comes down a little bit cheaper, like just looking at these charts, I mean, it's in that boring period before things get super exciting, and they will get super exciting coming up. And that's what I'm looking for. And most things are going to do pretty well. I'm just looking for ones that I think, okay, can this go 100x from here? And there still are some of those opportunities, just trying to find which ones they are. I want to give a shout out to Bill Gardner, top OG. It was great to meet Bill on. He joined us for an Around the Comiverse episode. He's been around for forever. It's great to see him on video and be able to talk to him. Freedom, Health, and Bitcoin. Love the name there. Hey, Rainmaker fam, let's go. Love it. All right. Hey, Jay and Paul, how's Enjin Starter looking? We can take a look at that. Let's get to VELO.
Sure. Which shall I do VELO because I've got that up?
Yeah, VELO.
Yeah. So yeah, this is an interesting chart. Very interesting. Did we cover it at some point? I can't remember it, but I do sort of remember something that looks like this. So maybe there's two that look very similar. But this is downward trend, first phase of the reversal, second phase. So this is a major double bottom base, which implies a very strong trend ahead. And it's actually trending up. It's broken this prior resistance. Took a couple of goes to do it, but that's fine. It's now through. It's got nice compression of price action, which is usually a sign that the market wants to go again. So it's hit a high, but stayed near the high. And all the only thing that it needs to do, which it might just have started, is volume needs to go up as it starts to break out. So, volume has been falling, but if we take from the 2nd of May, it is actually starting to go up a little bit. So let's see if that trend can push it up into this sort of area. We might see another sharp move. So I like the short term, and I kind of like the long term too, because it's recovering this trend. So for me, it's a buy.
Interesting what's going on with that chart. That chart is counter to most of what's going on. So Paul is a buy. I was doing a little bit more research because I don't know much about this project. The chart was interesting. Nothing's performing like that right now. So I was like, well, I got to look at deeper research on what's going on with this. So this is the last year. It was as cheap as 0.2 cents. It's now 10x that, but quite a bit lower from their previous highs of $1.60. So it's still down, like 98% from its previous highs.
It's got some history as well, which I think is interesting, because you could look at, say, a meme coin that's going up in the short term, but it hasn't got any history. At least this has got some history, which I think is important.
They do have a video that you can see on their website, and I was watching a little bit of the video. It seems like it's a decentralized exchange that you can trade not just crypto, but possibly other assets like gold and other things. So we'll see if that comes together. It also mentioned like a global proof of funds, which is helpful because like one of the things is like I've been looking at different houses that I want to look at, and I'm very passively looking for a house. And a lot of the ones in the price range that I'm looking at, they require proof of funds. Well, I don't have all that money sitting in the bank. A lot of it's sitting in crypto assets. So I could provide a proof of funds with the crypto assets if they would accept it. So global proof of funds is an interesting concept that like provided proof of funds, essentially the value of that asset by an entity that would, because for some people, they recognize, the proof of funds I send, and other people, they're like, oh, what's that? I don't understand crypto, and they don't really get it. So global proof funds is interesting. Don't know how much money they can make on that part of it, but interesting. It definitely has caught some traction. Let's look at a few other things. What is their circulating supply? So 24% of their tokens are in circulation. So the market cap right now is 165 million. The fully diluted market cap is 671 or 672 million. Okay, geez, it's been running hard though. I feel like maybe they must have launched their platform and they're getting really good traction or something. There's got to be some fundamental reason. Bro, you probably know what's going on with this. What is the fundamentals behind why it's taking off when everything else is doing so poor? There's always a reason. And maybe you know what that reason is. That's curious. For me, it's a wait. It's just gone 10x from where it was just in October. So over the past 6 months, it's gone 10x. I need to know better what's happening here before I can buy in, because I don't chase green candles unless I know the fundamentals, so I have an idea of whether there's going to be bigger green candles. I don't have 30 years price trading experience like Paul does, just to be able to straight look at the charts, know nothing about it, and just feel confident buying at these levels. Let's see. Interesting. Great suggestion. That's all I know about that one. Let's take a look at what was the other suggestion?
Enjin Starter.
Enjin Starter, yes, which is generally gaming launch pads have not been doing super well yet.
Yeah, I guess this is following the trend of the gaming coins that we've looked at before, but it's now back to a trend line, and it's showing a bit of support against that trend line. I know it's early days yet, and the way it's fallen into it has been quite aggressive, which can also make you take a step back and say, perhaps we should be a bit more cautious about just jumping in and buying. But as it's getting towards these support levels, it's looking more attractive. So this would be a really good place for a new trend to start. So we'll have to see in the next week or so whether it holds this. But overall, I think the short term, I'd be a little cautious just right now and say wait, because I want to see some of the gaming stocks move, especially if this is correlated to it. But long term, I believe it's based and it's going to work its way higher. So short term, it might be a wait, but I think longer term, it's a buy.
So it's a short-term wait, but longer-term buy. I like what's going on with this chart. I love the lower trend line here. That is a place that I more often like to buy the projects that I'm interested in. An Enjin Starter is a project that's interesting to me. I like launch pads, but they run during a very specific time frame, which is during the bull run. And we're not quite there. We saw some momentum pick up on this as blockchain gaming was covered, and Alex Becker and then a bunch of other people who then followed Alex Becker's lead talked about all the projects that were now hot after Alex Becker started talking about them. And things ran up like this. Cool. And then it's been cooling down as it's come out of the narrative. So Enjin Starter is starting to be a really good buy again. It's not as cheap as it was here at 0.3 cents, but it's almost there. It's 2x from that price. Way back here, it got even cheaper. Probably we won't see those prices again because even now there's some gaming projects that are launching, and Enjin Starter does a good job getting access to some of the good gaming projects. And some of the projects that are launching are good projects. So in order to participate in those launches on Enjin Starter's Launchpad, you have to hold a bunch of their tokens. So that's the use case for this token. Their market cap's at 21 million. A project like this can go to $1 billion or $2 billion market cap in a bull run if it gets a whole lot of traction. I think blockchain gaming is one of the biggest narratives in this upcoming bull run. So wouldn't be surprised to see it do those kind of numbers. Great suggestion. Yeah, I like that lower trend line. And some people say, well, what if it breaks down below that trend line? And I was like, should we be so lucky? Because then I get to buy more cheaper, because I think long term they still survive. So why not buy more cheap? So cool. Paul, thank you for joining us. You're a trooper.
It's a pleasure as always. Yeah, thank you, and look forward to next week.
Yes. All right. Want to close with a few final words. Like right now, we're kind of in this lull, and this just happens in crypto. A lot of it's 2 steps forward. Even in a bull run, it's 2 steps forward, 1 step back. And we had 2 steps forward earlier this year, and it felt really, really exciting. And then this step back doesn't feel so exciting, and people start to doubt, well, really, are we going to have this bigger bull run? Oh, it's still coming, and it's going to be bigger than you realize. And those that are patient and that are accumulating at these lows, like, they will realize why I'm so passionate about things at these prices. Looking forward to many of you experiencing that. I say many of you because some of you won't. Some of you won't believe me, or you'll put a little bit of money in. I remember I was talking to a gentleman that I'd met last summer, and I was talking to him about crypto back then. He reached out to me a couple months ago when Bitcoin was hitting new highs, and it's like, oh yeah, tell me more about crypto. I'm so interested. So we had this hour-and-a-half talk, and he's like, cool, I'm going to load up on some crypto. I was like, okay, that's cool. And then he messaged me a couple of days later. He's like, I bought like $250 worth of some token. I was like, 250. Like, for some people, that's a lot of money. For this guy, 250 is like pocket change. Like, Why is he wasting anyone's time with 250? Because even if he 10x's that, $250 turns into what? $22,000 or $25,000. That's cool. That is not life-changing money for where he's at in the place that he lives. And so 250 is like, why are you going so small? Maybe I did a terrible job explaining, or maybe he's just not ready to see the bigger picture, because what's coming is huge. And I've experienced before. I experienced a little bit of 2017. I just came in late. And even still, I saw what I had put in go 10x, which was super exciting. What was really exciting was being around for the bear market that followed, and then seeing where the gains could go from there, and then seeing this whole pattern play out again. So we've been through this long bear market. Many of you have been accumulating, and I know what happens next, and it's big. And I'm excited for most of you that are going to experience that. Everyone, you know what this wrap is all about. Enjoy, and we will see you soon.
Came into the space chasing all of the gains, chasing the pumps and all of the hype trains. But like in life, shit right before you could. Was told to buy when it was pouring like a rainmaker should. I buy when it's down, don't chase the post that I miss. Cause I always make the time in mind. I take the one out cause I'm patient like that, and I'll wait for the right time. I sell when it's high, I buy when it's low. They call me rich, they call me smart. I'm just a rainmaker running the show. Calculated investments, I don't lead with my heart. The principles are simple, they're leaving a mark. Why when it's boring, just gotta be smart. I sell when it's hype, like all the channels they pump it. That's when I was selling, got parabolic and dump it. They call me rich, they call me smart. I'm a rainmaker, making my own start. I'm with the future, learning the past. Makes it time fly by, years going so fast. The game plan is mine, I'll own it now. When I reach the top, haters asking me how. Cause I'm a rainmaker, investments I love, and I follow what I learn, not relying on luck. Time is never better, the time like the present. This next 5 years is a gift and it's feeling like heaven. I'm committed to learn, studying to know that nothing comes easy, but with knowledge the game show. Sticking out this wrong, cause soon will come a bear market. Learning and growing, and when it's slow will be the target. They say it's come out, Bitcoin is dead. The massive decreases can get to your head. Sticking around, the time is better. Strong like that, I'll let the others be fretters. 2 years time, the ball will bring back the gains. That makes it worth the effort, cause here comes the rain. So let's go rainmakers, let's make it all happen. Let go of the hate, let the haters be crapping. I'm here for 5 years, let's do this together. The time is right, the time could be better. They call me rich, they call me smart. I'm a rainmaker, making my own start. I'm with the future, learning the past. Makes it time fly by, years going so fast. This game plan is mine, I'll own it now. When I reach the top, haters asking me how. Cause I'm a rainmaker, investments I love, and I'll follow what I learn, not relying on luck. Haters be hating, the time to slow down. Addressing what they say when I'm wearing my crown. They're chasing green candles like someone who was new. I got a vision that was bigger, helping me to push through. I'm still human and sometimes it is rough, and that's what makes me special, simply I stay tough. Cause I'm a rainmaker, investments I love, and I follow what I learn, not relying on luck.